Omani delegations is in Sana'a to discuss with the Houthis ways to push peace efforts. Houthi militia continues to target populated areas in Adala governorate. Food crisis in Yemen deepens as the conflict extends across the country. Good evening. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. I'm Abir Ali and you're watching the English news. An Omani delegation arrived in the capital Sana'a 2 days ago. The aim of the visit is to discuss with the Houthis ways to push the peace efforts, especially after the truce expiry. This report has more.
Omani delegations are meeting with Houthi rebel leaderships in Yemen's capital Sana'a this week in an attempt to restart peace talks to end the country's lengthy civil conflict. Yemen has been at war since 2014, following a Houthi takeover of the capital Sana'a. A series of ceasefires were agreed upon in 2022 before falling apart later that year, but prospects for a new peace remain. A delegation from the Sultanate of Oman arrived in Sana'a seeking routes ahead for the Yemeni ceasefire, said Houthi-owned TV channel Al Masira. The diplomats were welcomed by Houthi senior negotiator Mohammed Abdus Salam, who will present the latest stance of the Saudi-led coalition, which has been battling the Houthis for over 8 years. Any progress towards a political settlement, according to the Houthi spokesman, must be linked to humanitarian operations, especially the lifting of the Saudi-led siege of Yemeni ports and airports. Furthermore, the Houthis are alleged to have withheld aid and besieged government-controlled regions such as Taiz. Food insecurity is at its worst in 3 years, and it is expected to grow if the country's war intensifies. According to the UN, an economic collapse exacerbated by the fighting in Ukraine might push millions more to the edge of starvation. Despite being a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, Oman has stayed neutral in Yemen's conflict, refusing to join the coalition that intervened in March 2015 to battle the Houthis. Over the course of several years, Oman has also actively promoted discussions in the crisis and served as a mediator between the opposing groups. The visit occurs at a crucial time for Yemen as both sides' attacks have risen as a result of the truce's expiry. Yemen's war is the world's biggest humanitarian crisis, causing immense suffering for people, with both sides accused of breaches by rights groups.
A recent United Nations report stated that 90% of Yemeni's population has no access to electricity. The report expected that the number of people in need of humanitarian assistance would decrease next year from 23.4 million to 21.6 million due to the adoption of new techniques in assessing humanitarian needs. The United Nations office stated that after more than 8 years of conflict, millions of people in Yemen are suffering from the disruption of services. A human rights organization monitored 350 death sentences by the Houthi militia since they seized Sana'a in 2014. The death sentences included politicians, opposition activists, journalists, and military personnel. The organization expressed concerns of further aggravation amid international silence. The Euro-Mediterranean Human Rights Monitor confirmed that the Houthi militia ignored applying of human rights standards in almost every case. Houthi militia continues to target populated areas in Adala governorate. Local sources reported that the Houthi shelling has left several casualties among civilians in the city. The following report has more.
Over 1 million landmines have been laid since the outbreak of the civil war in 2014. The landmines have caused a major catastrophe in the country and has put danger on the lives of millions of civilians who also face danger from missiles and shells fired from the ground, as well as landmines and explosive devices.
Houthi militia deliberately bomb civilians. They've destroyed everything.
Residential areas are subjected to indiscriminate barbaric bombing, causing material damage and civilian casualties, as the Houthi militia keep killing civilians and destroying their property and farms.
There are many victims of the landmines planted by the Houthis. 2 days ago, two kids were playing and a landmine exploded.
The child Maher Abdelhamid is another victim of the Houthi violence, as he was severely injured due to a Houthi explosion near his house in Al-Dala, and also another girl next to him was slightly injured.
I was playing, and while I was running, I stepped on a mine. He stepped on a mine and he lost his right leg.
Many areas and villages in north and west of Al-Dala are exposed to aggressive bombing with various types of weapons. Yet the international community stays silent, with no action to stop the Houthi violence.
A court in the capital Sana'a judged against the militia's decision to stop broadcasting the Voice of Yemen radio station. Human rights and media sources said that the press and the publication court issued a decision regarding the closure of Voice of Yemen radio station nearly a year after halting broadcasting. The sources pointed out that the ruling also decided to grant the radio a permit to rebroadcast and compensate it, and to return to the looted equipment that the Houthi militia had taken before. The family of the activist Ahmed Hajar held Houthi militia responsible for his safety after he was kidnapped 2 days ago in Sana'a. They added that he was kidnapped by armed elements on a Zubayri street. This comes 2 days after he broadcasted a video recording in which he revealed people's view of Houthi and their practices of corruption and extortion of citizens. A civilian and a girl were injured in a Houthi mine explosion in Al Jawf. Local sources confirmed that a mine left behind the Houthi militia exploded in one of the areas of Al Maslub district, injuring a civilian and a girl, which medical sources described it as serious. According to the sources, the explosion occurred near a secondary road, and the injured person were taken to a hospital for treatment. Houthi militia is responsible for the spread of hunger in Yemen. According to the United Nations, the rebel militia blocked the delivery of aid in the areas under their control and even loots the aid. Such a thing has doubled the suffering of Yemenis. This following report has more details.
The Famine Early Warning Network expected the conflict to gradually escalate in Yemen due to the Houthis' inflexibility towards renewing the UN-sponsored truce. It said that the high levels of conflict again would reduce income opportunities for families and impede fuel imports through the Red Sea ports. In a recent report, the network stated that the truce, which started in April and ended in October, has supported some improvements in business activity, trade, and humanitarian access. According to the network, the prices of food and basic non-food items are still much higher than average. According to the report, the harvest of the main season continues and will end at the end of this month, and the vegetable growing season is expected to start in January. However, seasonal improvements in household access to food and income will be temporary, as household food stocks are expected to last no more than 2 months. The report warned that the availability of other sources of food and income remains very low after years of protracted conflict. Many families will have lower incomes and will not be able to buy enough food from the market after their stocks are depleted. The report stated that the distribution of humanitarian aid witnessed a decrease in frequency to about 13 million beneficiaries throughout the current year due to a funding shortage, as WFP has reduced the frequency of distributions from monthly to approximately once every 6 weeks, and reduced the serving size per distribution from about 80% of minimum calorie needs to about 65% in the continuous distribution cycle. While the 65% share is a relative improvement from earlier this year, households still experience gaps in food consumption.
The King Salman Humanitarian Aid signed a joint cooperation agreement with the World Food Programme to meet the basic food needs. The agreement will be benefiting 524,000 people with a total value of $20 million, and it was signed by the representative of the program. The representative of the World Food Programme in Yemen explained that the support provided by the King Salman Center contributed to sparing the Yemeni people the danger of famine. Coming next in the news. Water scarcity aggravated the desertification on farmlands in Lahj Governorate.
ننزل ندي ماء من الغل والغلا بعيد، كنا ندي بالدواب نعبي ماء ورجعنا. ننزل الساعة 5 رجعنا الساعة 9.
ما يجي لنا ظهر لأنه زحمة ما حد لي يخلي الجهل يغرق وإحنا تعبنا زيادة.
وكنت أحس صدري يوجعني وعز قدرك ركبي يوجعيني.
كنا ما نستخدم حتى نغسل أولادنا إلا يعني بأيام معدودة.
كنت أغيب على المدرسة لأن أنا كنت أروح الديمة.
حتى وإن كان يجي الأمطار تروح هدم لأنه ما في معيار الزمن.
الوقت نشتري ب30,000 هي معها استهلاك ما يغلقش معها الشهر.
بس راح تطلب الله ولا أي حاجة، عاملة كل شغلك الماء.
Welcome back. In Lahj, desertification has developed most of the farmlands in the province. Such a problem is attributed to the scarcity of water and climate change. The following report gives more details.
Consecutive crises have affected Lahj farms in recent years. The hardships facing farmers due to climate change and a shortage of water supplies have compounded, endangering lives. Despite having the lowest carbon emissions, Lahj has suffered the most from climate change.
المحافظة كانت تنتج أجود أنواع المحاصيل من السمسم.
This governorate used to produce the highest crop quality, including sesame, cotton, bananas, mangoes, lemons and others. The water shortage has resulted in the desertification of land and the reduction in agricultural processes.
There are vast regions here that have not been harnessed, with agricultural trees doomed to rot in the midst of weeds. The situation demands immediate action from the relative government officials and individuals involved in the agricultural sector.
Some farmers have completely given up their craft after the war descended. They are not receiving aid from the government authorities or local and international organizations.
According to the locals, the two biggest problems confronting Lahj farms are the deterioration of crucial infrastructure and the rise in desertification brought on by climatic variations.
The governorate has suffered lately due to the scarcity of water and torrential outages. A lot of farms have dried up and fuel prices have risen up greatly. This has caused a lot of farmers to give up their craft and convert their fertile lands into residential areas. The economy is deteriorating and people suffer from an income shortage.
Environmental protection advocates are searching for alternatives to prevent further harm, and it is the responsibility of human rights groups to assist farmers in establishing initiatives that propagate native plants.
من البيت للمدرسة حوالي 45 دقيقة. نمشي سريع عشان نلحق الإذاعة المدرسية، وأكبر معاناة لي الآن هي تأخير الراتب. وبالرغم من ظروف البلاد والحرب والوضع، بس احنا نكافح عشان التعليم. هدفنا الوحيد هو التعليم ويخرج جيل صالح مسلح بالعلم.
The cabinet gave directions to close all government accounts outside the central bank and stop spending from savings. Finance Minister stressed on the importance of recording grants, saving expenditures and activating the oversight role for next period to protect public money. He stressed that the principle of reward and punishment will be activated and any practices that violate the procedures will expose the predators to legal accountability. Poultry producers and sellers in Sana'a have complained about increase in levies imposed by the Houthi militia. Commercial sources said that the Houthi militia imposed levies on poultry producers and sellers and threatened those who refused with imprisonment, arrest, and confiscations of their goods. Poultry producers and sellers warned that the collapse on the sector due to the continuous levies, calling for an end to those practices. The World Food Programme announced that an agreement with Saudi Arabia has been signed to increase aid for Yemeni people. Such an agreement is hoped to provide food assistance for more than 500,000 Yemeni across the country. The following report gives more details.
Yemen is a country that has been suffering from dire hunger crisis since the conflict broke out in 2015. According to the UN, about 17.4 million people need urgent humanitarian assistance. Millions of people in Yemen are at risk due to the conflict, climate shocks, and the possibility of worldwide collapse. Yemen's most vulnerable families are having a tougher time getting by every day due to rising food insecurity, and the chances of the nation recovering are getting less. The King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center has donated $20 million to the World Food Programme to help with supplying the most vulnerable households in Yemen with their immediate food requirements. The World Food Programme will be able to fill crucial gaps in the life-saving food assistance program in 3 distribution cycles in 2023 because of the donation from Saudi Arabia through King Salman Relief, preventing operational breakdowns. This donation will help more than 500,000 people who are severely food insecure for up to 3 months. WFP will purchase wheat flour, the major essential ingredient in the monthly food basket. The impacted families and communities would benefit from the contribution in part by having improved livelihoods and resilience. WFP Yemen's representative and country director stated that King Salman Relief's assistance has prevented starvation. He added that the neediest families are going to greatly benefit from this donation at this time. Since 2015 till now, Saudi Arabia has contributed to WFP's response in Yemen with $1.168 billion, including $380 million in 2019. This enabled WFP to expand operations to 13 million people, saving Yemen from starvation.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Omani delegation is in Sana'a to discuss with the Houthis ways to push peace efforts. Houthi militia continues to target populated areas in Abdullah Governorate. Food crisis in Yemen deepens as the conflict extends across the country. This is the end of the news. It was Abir Ali, and thank you for watching.